Well, we can start with the good news. It's been a great crop in Provost, Alberta, and right across much of the prairies. The bad news, unfortunately, is that the Chinese government has hit us with another round of tariffs, this time 75% on Canadian canola seed. That's on top of the 100% tariffs on Canadian canola oil and meal and peas, plus a 25% tariff on seafood, on pork, and other Canadian producers have been targeted. It's another kick to Canada as the world just seems to be thinking that it can walk all over the Canadian economy under the weak leadership of this Liberal government. To add insult to injury, Mark Carney seems determined to go ahead giving a taxpayer-funded $1 billion loan to Beijing and to Chinese shipmakers to make ferries for British Columbia. That's right, the Canadian government is backing a $1 billion loan that will go to the construction of ferries for British Columbia that are made in China. So imagine the lesson that this sends to the government in Beijing, that if they attack our farmers, they get $1 billion of credit from our government. But, you know, it stacks up yet another loss that we're facing that is painful for our workers, our farmers, our businesses, since Carney was elected on the promise, by the way, that he would be a master negotiator that would negotiate wins for Canada. He said he could handle Donald Trump. Remember that one? Well, what's been the result since? One, Carney's missed 2 of his promised deadlines to get a deal with the Americans. Under that period of time, the president has actually doubled tariffs on Canada while the Prime Minister continues to back down, making concession after concession on digital services tax, on counter tariffs, getting absolutely nothing in return. Sounds like elbows down to me. The Americans, meanwhile, are signing trade deals with Japan and Europe. They've given extensions to China and Mexico, no such extension to Canada. And speaking of other markets, well, what's happening around the world? Liberal ministers went down to Mexico, groveling for a bilateral deal. The Mexicans sent them packing. Prime Minister went and did some photo ops in Europe, but while President Trump has signed a deal with the Europeans to sell $750 billion of American energy to the European Union, the EU has promised to buy exactly 0 Canadian dollars worth of Canadian energy from our oil and gas, which is actually could be even more competitive if we had a government that would be opening up markets and allowing pipelines to get it there. In other words, Carney is losing, and the more he loses abroad, the more Canadian farmers, workers, and businesses pay here at home. But it doesn't have to be this way. Conservatives are going back to Parliament in the fall, and we're going to be fighting to put Canada first. We've got a real plan to do it. First of all, we want to cancel the $1 billion loan for the Chinese-made vessels. Let's focus on building those types of things here in Canada so we can be strong, self-reliant, and sovereign. Speaking of sovereign, we also want to pass a Canadian Sovereignty Act, which will unleash our economic independence by taking advantage of our incredible resources. For example, it would legalize pipeline construction by repealing C-69, legalize shipping of oil off the North BC coast by repealing C-48, unlocking the production of Canadian energy by getting rid of the production cap. It would legalize your right into the future to continue to buy a gas or diesel powered truck or car, which is necessary for our farmers all across these rural regions. It would bring in a massive tax cut on energy, home building, investment, and work. The most interesting of which is that we would get rid of capital gains tax for anyone who reinvests their proceeds here in Canada. A huge win for farmers who might be selling one investment and moving it to another Canadian investment, all while bringing home the $500 billion of capital that the Liberals have driven into the United States of America. This is a real plan to make our economy stronger and more self-reliant. We need to strategically counter-tariff Beijing in order to dissuade them from going ahead with these tariffs on our Canadian producers. And we need to work with Canadian Western farmers to make sure that they have the supports they need to compensate them for the losses that these tariff defeats have incurred on their families and on their operations. but we can do it. We can unlock the potential of this big, vast land, standing up for our farmers, our workers, and our businesses. And that will be our objective when we get back to Parliament this fall.